Oh,
Hi, Tola. There's generator noise in my background. Is it very loud?
no, we can't. We actually can't hear anything. So
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Then that's okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot for joining us again, Teniola Tayo. I'm glad to have another guest of ours joining us in person of Timmy Olagunju. Timmy, I'm not quite sure you can hear us. Can you hear us well? Hello, Timmy. I'm not quite sure what's happening, but we can't hear you. So maybe you want to log off and then be back on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, I was using my earpiece, but apparently I need to remove it.
Okay, that's fine. Just to be sure, I mean, it's fine if you totally don't have your video on, but just to let you know, we can't see you as well.
Well, the the work rate won't allow me to get my video on. Is that
Okay.
fine?
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Thanks a lot for joining though. Again, for some of our audience, you already met Teniola in the morning. She's a political analyst. She's a researcher. She's currently an associate researcher at the West Africa think tank, and she also runs a consulting. I'm not quite sure the name. Can you remind me, Tenny?
It's called Alliance Advisors.
Alanet Advisors. So we have Tenny here again, and I also have with me Barrister Timi Olagunjo, who is a tech lawyer and a policy analyst. So for some of you, you've probably you've seen his face quite a lot, especially in the political space. So I'll just delve into it. I'll go live now. Sorry, I've not gone live. So I'll go live now, and I suppose now we have, I mean, we don't still quite have a clear view of what things look like, especially on the results front, right? But it's very interesting. And I think this has been it's like almost a consensus for everyone I've brought on the show, so to say, so far. INEC preparedness has not been the best. What do you have to say? Like, maybe this is just me, maybe this is just a bias for some of us following the poll. I'll just give you a few statistics. Since we are a data-led firm and some of the things we've been doing, we sampled about 1,500 polling units. That's not, I mean, that's quite a small number if you compare to 100,000 polling units. But the way these things work for our audience is that the sample is supposed to represent, the larger population of what's happening, right? And we found out that overall, as at 9:30 a.m., only 41% of the polling units had started voting. This was for a voting that was scheduled to start at 8:30 a.m. In fact, if you break it down by region, disparity is even more alarming. In the Northeast, it's 42%. In the Northwest, it was 42% as well. In the Southeast, it was 10%. In the South, it was 29%. Southwest was quite high, it was 63%, quite surprisingly. In the North Central, it was 45%. So you've seen some outliers there. Southwest quite high, Southeast depressingly low. What do we think is happening? What do you think is happening? And what does this say about public trust in our political process? I will start with you, Tenny, before I move to Timmy.
To me, it reflects the general difficulties that we find within the Nigerian public service, so we always have very grand aspirations, but when it gets to it, it's about the manpower that we have or that we can deploy to meet those aspirations. The question is also to what extent the recent challenges, affected the logistics of the elections, even though the INEC chairman assured everyone that he was working with the CBN and with all other stakeholders to ensure that they had the needed resources for moving things around, like cash for transportation. But it will be interesting to know to what extent maybe that still proved difficult for them or posed some challenges for them. But for me, in general, it's just the fact that our public service, whether it comes to infrastructure or to personnel, to training, because one of the INEC officials was saying that training is also an issue. It's often not at the levels that we need it to be able to deliver some of the things that we want.
Yeah, excellent. No, so you mentioned training, and I'm going to direct this to Timmy based on what you said. a key thing now, and I really foresaw this happening. In the morning, there wasn't much problems with beavers. People seemed to be fine. I mean, the fact that INEC officials came late was a different conversation, right? And that some critical materials didn't come on time. But in terms of the tech generally, people seem to be fine with beavers, not much widespread complaint. But I think the big fish is here now, which is IREF. People are complaining. And I think, I was just looking at, the list of several, civil society organizations that were working together, not less than 10 of them that have, this kind of digital platforms to be able to connect to INEC's server and monitor results live. But it's been a shit show. Sorry for the use of that word. If you at presidential portal right now, no single result has been uploaded as at the last 2 to 3 minutes before I joined the call. For the senatorial results, what we are seeing, we can't quite estimate it, but it's definitely less than 1% of the PU result that have been uploaded, because typically what you find is in a state with like 33 local governments, you have just maybe 2 local governments are being uploaded. And out of those 2 local governments, you have maybe 3 wards in each local government. And in a ward, you have maybe 2 polling units. And it doesn't just even stop there. What we are seeing is the poor quality of what's being uploaded. At the minimum, this is not even a tech thing. INEC should have been able to train its staff to upload clear results, with the devices that are available to them. So, Timmy, what do you make of that, especially in terms of our technological readiness? I wouldn't expect INEC, sure, we had 99% upload rate. Why is this happening now?
Well, interestingly speaking, technology is only an enabler. Technology is only as good as humans who operate it. Right. And that's where the challenge is. There's a demand side. There's a demand side for technology, but there's not a supply side to execute the use of technology, perhaps by virtue of human factors, or perhaps the issue of intentional purposes towards frustrating the process. Right, so that's it. Because you see, all these things we're talking about has been issues that have been observed. Before now, the test run that was held, it was observed that 15 states out of 36 states were only able to upload the results.
Right.
And that has been something that was being clamored for as an issue. So it doesn't seem commonsensical, although common sense is not common in sense. It doesn't seem commonsensical that, haven't been aware of what the challenge is.
Right.
From the test run and spending so much billions on the test run that it will now result into a futile effort. It's like pouring water into a basket, and it's unacceptable. So that's the thing. Even the issue of training has been raised, that when the test run was going on, INEC officials were deployed. But then the question was, the INEC officials that were deployed, were they the same set of people that would operate the system when the elections are properly done?
Right.
And that question could not be answered. Right? What really happened is what happened when some of us who attended public secondary schools, right? When the invigilator is coming from the state office, the teacher parades all the students and gives them answers to the question. And then, some of the brightest students are in front and some people are backbenchers. And then they'll point, they'll say, oh, Ojo, what is so and so equation of this? And then Ojo will move some stones to point. But in actual sense, there's no real learning happening. Right? So that's the case that is on board here. If mathematically speaking, it doesn't make sense that having spotted those issues, that INEC will still fall in the same trap, right? And then, if it does happen that way, it means that there is something wrong about it. Is either there is a certain human move to frustrate the process or things of this nature, and it's completely unacceptable.
Right. I think it's quite interesting what you've mentioned in terms of I think this was standing in terms of like this reflecting the the broad public service in Nigeria. I'm quite inclined to disagree, because, and I think my hunch was that we saw this happen INEC had, challenges with Abuja elections, especially with Beavers, right? And it was sort of corrected in Osun. So I felt like maybe there's some sort of learning going on there, right? But with this one, I'm quite inclined to think, is there a political move there? Maybe,
Well, apparently, but even with the Osun, there don't seem to be a lot of learning happening, because the Osun's, my next mistake in the Osun's case was the basis upon which the tribunal gave its judgment. So you see that there's not a lot of failing forward in that sense. But that is also deliberate, which also points to the point you raised, which is the fact that it could be largely political, in that sense, those kind of errors. And it might not be, it might just be the general inefficiency that accustoms a system where there is a lack of accountability.
Right. Right.
So that's it. Yeah.
Right. No, I think so. Before we go into my other question, sorry, I'm stretching that a little bit, and I think this comes from being in our situation room as well and seeing what people are actually saying on the ground. In reality, if you look at it from a bureaucratic point of view, it doesn't make sense to say this is something political, right? It's like this could happen. This is expected to happen at the scale at which
project management is an F9.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Osun was less than, I don't know, maybe less than 3,000 polling units compared to 100,000 polling units. But I'll read something. This is a tweet from Patty Tommy, and I think this is why I tried to poke the question a little bit. He said, this was about an hour ago. He said, I just spoke to the Labour Party chairman, Abure, who fears that the upload failure epidemic may be seen by the youth as an attempt to rig a clear Labour landslide across the country. He's scared that if they hit the street, Nigeria could burn. I urge Chairman Yakubu to redeem himself. And again, like, let's stay on this a little bit. Why do you youth might consider this as a political move? Because if INEC had not even introduced RF at all, nobody will be having this problem, right? So it just then begs the question, right? If INEC is having this signal, before someone comes up on Twitter to tweet it, these are some of the political, echelons of Nigeria, they would have reached out to INEC and all of that. And it's clear INEC is able to upload senatorial elections, House of Rep elections, even though there are issues with that. Presidential is just totally been left out,
Yeah, I can come in here and I'd say that it's always been, something that I've been saying about these elections, that it's very important that whatever the challenges are, they're communicated properly. If not, we can have the issue of transparency, because they may be having technical challenges, but if they do not communicate this properly to Nigerians, and there's going to be the room to speculate on why these things are happening. So that's my own plea to INEC. Whatever is happening, please let us know, let everyone know. Let it be clear that there is no political motivation for what is happening. Let us know what the failures are, just so that people don't start filling in the gaps, because it's very dangerous. And this is an election that will be a very tricky one. So we can't at this stage start having those kinds of speculations, because we still have a long way to go before we even figure out who's going to win the elections.
I mean, we have, I think on my last show, I was saying we have at least 24 hours to be anxious, at least 24 to 48 hours to be anxious. Timmy, what do you have to say to that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. She's raised a very key point. Conversation enriches the understanding. But in the course of observing the entire election preparation, I think on terms of logistics, I might score INEC a bit higher than I would score them in terms of communication, right? And we've raised this point severally, that if during the Corona period and also during the Ebola period, right, the NCDC thought it fit to work with social media platforms, to work with platforms like yours, right, towards sharing real-time information that would help people get what they need to fight fake news by themselves, because fake news is best fought by the people. It dwells amongst the people must fight it and must be armed towards it. And in that sense, INEC has not done so much in terms of extending partnerships. I know that I work towards ensuring that some social media platforms get across to INEC, try to orchestrate partnerships with them towards the fact that what happened with NCDC during the Ebola and Corona period works out with INEC, where, this platform, there are Gen Zs on TikTok their, baby boomers and the likes on Facebook and the likes of us, on Facebook have decided not to face our books. And then you have LinkedIn, you have Twitter. There is nothing, it is not all the time that you use the carrot and stick and broom approach. Sometimes you extend the hand of partnership so that they can have platforms dedicated towards providing real-time information about INEC's activities going forward. So INEC has kind of taken all the burden together all on itself when it could have stretched out a arm of partnership. And that is a core challenge. So communication, I would call them really so.
No. Thanks for that. So maybe then, if there's a communication gap, I will stay on what Pastor Tommy is saying. Do you think the youth might consider this as highly consequential, even though in itself it's not necessarily a thing? Like I was saying, INEC could have done well without an IREV anyways. So, but do you think the youth might take issues with it? And
yes. Like Teniola rightly stated. Apparently, yes, because where there's miscommunication, there's a perception for misconception, and where there's misconception, violence is always looking around, looking for whom to default. That is that is a key point to note. But INEC still has room to redeem itself in the sense that, for instance, when you go on the platform, INEC had promised us that we will see it real time. Apparently, INEC has lied in that sense, because when you go on the platform, zero, you can't even find any single upload.
Some people are not even able to access it. It's been
it's overworked, overwhelmed. So those are key issues that we need to. INEC can redeem its image but that's why some of us citizens agents, there's this thing I started up with citizens agents towards people taking a picture of the from EC8A and sharing it on social media. I think those are key issues. Perhaps Tini has some thoughts to add.
Right.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm not too excited about the fact that he made that post, because it's really very tense at the moment, and you don't want to start putting ideas in people's heads. People are already worried that the uploads are not happening, and for someone like him with a lot of influence, with a lot of followership, it's just very important to be as diplomatic as possible at this point. So yes, there's an opportunity for INEC to come out and explain in detail what is going on, respond to the inquiries by people. I mean, it's clear that they're a bit overwhelmed at the moment, but this is very important. One thing that we really need for these elections is for them to be as transparent as possible, because that's how we can make sure that whatever the outcomes are, people are somewhat satisfied, that their mandates or their votes or whatever was protected and it wasn't stolen. So this is really, really important, I think, and INEC should make it a priority.
Can I chip in? Okay. I wanted to chip in a few things to Tenny's points, but if you have I wanted to say that I do agree with you in the sense that it's important to curtail the conversations that flow at this point in time. However, I still want to play a bit of a devil's advocate here, and it's in the sense that sometimes it is good to help stretch the imagination of policymakers in a way that makes them see, like vividly, from someone like himself, they can see the vivid implication of their actions. So for example, an instance was during the students not being able to go home to vote and all that kind of thing. And I told some people say, the federal government will not allow because they know youths will never vote for them. And I said, look, let's tackle it from 2 points of view and push our narratives around that. First point of view is, let's push our narrative not from the perspective that we want youths to be able to vote. No. We know that won't favor them, but let's appeal to their sense of fear by saying that, look, if you allow youth to stay in school en masse and you don't give them the opportunity to dispatch, right, leave before elections, once they gather in cluster, whatever happens to them or whatever they perpetuate in school in clusters is going to be on your head. That itself was the same narrative that NUC pushed in their letter days after we started that narrative. So sometimes policymakers in this part of the world, they behave like goats, but anyways, over to you, please.
Let's talk about something that's been bothering me. Timmy, you mentioned the citizens agents which you're running. I was on one of the Twitter spaces that you've been holding periodically today. I'll come back to that. And I saw there were about 4,000 people there live reading results across different polling units. I thought that was massive, especially for one person. And I think there's some power in that. But before I come into that in detail, Tenny, from what you've been observing, and I must quite admit at this point, I'm not in the country myself, so I'm running this from the diaspora. You are on the ground, Timmy is on the ground as well. Is there some convergence between social media and reality? Not necessarily for any candidates in terms of how people behave, voters' perception and attitude and general feel,
I think still, even the reality that I'm exposed to is still within my network and my space. So it's difficult to say, because the same people that I can see on social media, the people that are around me in Abuja, in my WhatsApp groups, so I can't see beyond that bubble, because it's just the space that I am in. It's clear that in cities like Abuja and Lagos, a lot of the people that were online actually went out to vote. That's very clear. Most people that I know that had their cards went out to vote. They stayed at the polling units until the votes were counted, some of them are even trying to stay until the numbers are uploaded. But, it's still very much a small circle, because I don't know what someone in Sokoto is doing, or in Taraba State to that extent. So I think it's still too early to tell,
Yeah, very well. Timmy, what's the situation report like for you on the ground? I know very well, we must quite admit this, you are a Labour Party enthusiast, for the lack of a better word. And I saw that you've been running these excellent spaces with people in their thousands journey. What has it been like, comparing that social media enthusiasm with on the ground realities?
Actually, I'm not a behavioral scientist, but I think in the evidence, evidence is the end of argument, right? The evidence in this election has shown an increasingly important role that social media plays. Have you noticed that, for example, that on TV stations, even APCON, that's advertising agencies of Nigeria, complained that they did not get a lot of advert fees or approvals of political adverts, simply because social media is there. So basically, a lot of people did a lot of activities on social media, try to engage boost buzz, on social media, rather than engage TV adverts, which was the trend. Even billboards, nobody can even send billboard again. You understand? If you like, don't allow other people to post their billboard. They'll be looking at you. The biggest billboard so far is social media platform. And one thing is that just like Las Vegas, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Whatever happens on social media stays there.
Stays there, yeah.
Unlike, television adverts that when you do it once, it's gone. And so in that regard, somehow, I think that may be a point of research after this election, the power of social media for political mobilization, I think. And that is because if you look at it increasingly, I know that with the recent Starlinks that came on board, they have not paid Dataphyte for adverts. So I won't mention their name a second time. But, with that particular stuff, it gave Nigeria access to 100%, supposedly 100% broadband access.
Right.
And although issues of cost and all that are still issues within, whether it's affordable or not. But the point is that increasingly, Nigerians are beginning to engage, whether Facebook, whether Twitter, whether TikTok, whether, whatever platform. And that implies that with societies where there's an increased level of access to mobile phones and digital media, there is an increased access of the capacity for social media to effect change in such societies. I think that is the thing about it in that sense.
Right. I think maybe another layer to it, which is what I've been thinking about, is this idea of social media and the elite class, merger, so to say. And you're seeing that in the way results are coming in. In Aso Rock, the polling, I think there are 2 polling units in Aso Rock. Peter will be one there, right? I'm seeing some very interesting
polling units, I think. From the results from my space so far. 4 polling units.
No, that's even more than what I know, so from on the field I thought it was 2. And in Lagos as well, you're seeing certain places in Alausa which you are likely to predict that the set of people registering to vote there are civil servants, top level, civil servants. You're seeing Peter Obi win there as well. Do you think there's some sort of, I mean, this is probably preemptive, but should we be expecting something special from elite votes, and especially also in elite states compared to some other states, for instance, in the north? Tenny or Timmy, either of you could go first.
One thing I wanted to mention was that also, I mean, like we've been saying, I've been seeing some calls on social media where people are saying that they don't know what is happening in the north, because a lot of the updates that have been coming primarily from the south, and people are even worried. So I can see a lot of obedience saying, now the north is a blind spot. We're going to be blindsided. We have no idea what is going on. I mean, Timmy would know more because, he has access to the inside of that. But yes, I think that for these elections, the cities, the urban people definitely came out to vote. The question always goes back to the fact that what percentage, does the middle class really make of the entire of Nigeria's voting population in that sense? So even if all of the middle class came out to support one candidate, would it be enough? So again, it depends on turnout per region. I saw a news article that El-Rufai was saying that turnout in Kaduna State was low. We don't know what the numbers yet are really, because a lot of the things that we're saying are just based on optics or visual. So you walk by a polling unit, you see a lot of people there, and then you say turnout was high, but we don't know the comparison between the people that showed up that were able to vote versus the people that were registered to vote there. Because again, let's not forget that it's not just about people leaving their houses, it's also about whether they were able to vote, because a lot of people were in the wrong polling units because of the mix-up or the changes in polling units, or they were not found on the voters registers, or things like that. So yes, a strong showing from the middle class, but at the end of the day, is it going to be enough is the question.
Right. Timmy, over to you.
I think Timmy has done justice to the question of, will that be enough? I think that this is not an election or an engagement of the elite class. Yes. So what we have is that we have the elite class playing a middleman position in terms of driving certain narratives.
Right.
But then what we have is largely that narrative being taken over by every person, including those who are, as much as I don't like to use this word, the bottom of the triangle. It's not a pyramid, right? And so you see, for example, okay, I went to university, I have a master's, right? You might call me an idiot. My mom never had the privilege of finishing a secondary school education. But then I can narrate to her what the situation is. And she's already calling me that, look, she has gone to vote for Mama, Papa,
Pekin.
I'm not trying to be political here. The elections is over. So, so you see, and then sometimes, like I visited her a few days ago, and then I overheard a conversation in her house with a group of women who were saying something different. And she was giving them in Yoruba some serious arguments that I said, Mom, see, are you sure you will not consider studying law like this? Because she took the narrative in a way that even I could not believe it. So you see that it was something that was driven largely by, some group of, some elite group in some sense, but then was taken over by group of persons that you might not consider elite in that sense, but they had common sense to be able to decipher the situation of things. And some of the policy decisions that were made tailored towards the election, for instance, the Naira redesign and all that, affected, because when you touch the bread and butter of, in quotes, the common person, they react. And some of those policies were a key pain point that helped to drive previous narratives from the elite. So I don't see this as an elite thing. I see it as the people thing, you know, in that sense of
right,
the word.
Right. Okay. There seems to be some interesting point of view here. I think our time is fast spent. Essentially, we've spent 30 minutes so far. Maybe just one final thing and this goes to either of you. What do you think we should be expecting tomorrow? It's too early, like I said, to expect results coming in. But again, I wouldn't expect the citizenry to be quiet and just all through. We're just waiting on INEC. Just a couple of hours ago, the INEC chairman essentially shut down the INEC Collation Center. It was like, this is the last speech I'm going to be giving. The next time I'll be up here is in 24 hours time. Do you expect the citizenry to be silent? What should we expect? I mean, in a very responsible way, of course. What should the 24 hours look, the next 24 hours look like for us?
I think I'll let Timmy answer that because I'm not in the business of projections. So that's, you know, in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted Timmy to go first, but she's passed the baton.
Yeah.
Well, I must say that I'm a big partisan, but since you've mentioned the word in the most, you know, so I would take the last caution that you gave and I'll work with that.
Yeah.
What I project would happen most likely will be a situation where election results, because some persons are still voting, some polling units, they're still voting ongoing.
Some polling units were cancelled in Bayelsa. I think about 140.
Oh, yes. Yes, elections will be held later on those ones. I heard, you know, tomorrow or next week thereabouts. But most importantly is the fact that some voting polling units are still voting currently. Some started around past 6. After it has closed by 2:30, you know, so there'll be a lot of issues. What I project going forward is that there's going to be a lot of disgruntled protests, whether from with either sides. You would always find, whether you're on Labour side or PDP or APC or ANMPP side, you always find a reason to feel disgruntled. Right. You know, because the way INEC, there are certain things that happened in this election that did not show some measure of excellence and can become basis for legal action.
Right.
Even action in the courts of public opinion, and whichever sides can always take on it. So I see that tomorrow there's going to be a lot of result trickling in, but it's going to be subject to a lot of legal action going forward. I see that happening.
Right. No, thanks for that. I mean, to be quite honest, we all know that it's still the next 2-3 days at least to wait before official results start tripping in from INEC. All of tomorrow is going to be projections, and I must quite admit, what we usually had in the past was civil society organizations being able to, you know, make some, you know, PVT workup, private vote tabulation, and all of that. But this year it's been, I think, it's quite interesting. INEC has really promised a lot, but I'm not sure if they've lived up to expectations. So, and I think that's what we'll be hoping to see tomorrow, if there's going to be a change somewhere, especially with IREF and some of the polling units that voting haven't been held yet. But anyways, thank you so much to the both of you. I really appreciate you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your very useful insight. I'm sure our audience are benefiting from it. And this is probably the last session I'm having with Tenny. Thanks for coming in the morning.
Thank you so much. It was fun. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure I'm having Timmy tomorrow again. I think Timmy will be having you again at 12 p.m. I think.
No, I think 9
p.m. again this time. Yeah. So tomorrow,
my schedule is 9.
We'll have some clearer view, and stay tuned, everyone. See you.
Thank you, Ayatollah. Thank you, Tenny.